My child, something tried to stop this message from reaching you, not in a dramatic way, not with noise or spectacle, but in the quiet way that interference always works, through the distraction that pulled at the edge of your attention, through the hesitation that almost made you keep scrolling, through the sudden weariness that rose in your chest right before this began. And yet here you are, and here I am. The fact that both of those things are true at this exact same moment is not coincidence. I arranged this. I drew you here because what I am about to say is something you have needed to hear for a long time, and something the ones who hurt you were counting on you never hearing. They counted on you staying confused about what happened. They counted on you staying small and uncertain, and circling the same questions without ever receiving the answers that would set you free from them. They counted on the story they told about you outlasting the truth. I know about you, my child. Their count was wrong. It was wrong from the moment they made it. And today I am going to tell you why. Before a single word of their plan was spoken out loud, before the first lie was formed behind careful eyes, before the first door was closed in your face, and the first alliance was quietly turned against you, I had already prepared the way out. I want you to receive that with your whole being, not as comfort for a wound that is still healing, as fact about a war that was already decided before you felt the first blow land. Psalm 37:12 says the wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them. But listen to what the next verse says, my beloved, because this is the part they never quote. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming. I was not watching their plotting in silence because I was helpless or distant, or had simply decided to let them proceed unchecked. I was watching in the full and settled knowledge that every scheme they were constructing was being built on ground I had already cleared for your exit. They were not ahead of you. They were never ahead of me. The tables have already turned, my child. They just have not finished falling yet. Right now, in this moment, as these words reach you, something may be shifting in your chest, a loosening, a heaviness that has been sitting between your ribs beginning to ease, not because the situation has fully resolved on every front that still needs resolution, not because all the verdicts have been publicly announced and all the people who should have spoken up have finally spoken, but because truth has a signature that your spirit recognizes before your mind has the language to name what it is sensing. That loosening is real, my beloved. Do not dismiss it as wishful thinking. Do not push it away because you have learned to be careful about hope. It is the weight of carrying something alone for too long beginning to release in the presence of the one who has known the full and unedited and unspun version of your story since before any of it began to unfold. You were never alone in this, not for a single moment, and the message today is the proof of it. Type "I felt it" in the comments right now. Type it as the witness of someone whose spirit just recognized truth before their thoughts finished forming. Type it because the part of you that has been waiting for confirmation just received it. That moment deserves to be marked out loud. You have held too much in silence. Let this one thing be said. My beloved, I want to speak plainly about what they did, because you have spent too long wondering if you were imagining it. Too long being told you were too sensitive, too long carrying the specific and deliberate doubt they planted in you, the doubt designed not to lead you to clarity but to keep you circling confusion, so that you never arrived at the ground steady enough to name what was actually done. Let me be the one who names it so you never have to wonder again. They saw your kindness and called it weakness. They saw your patience and called it permission. They saw your grace and treated it as a resource they were entitled to drain without replacing. They saw your silence and called it confession, as though the absence of retaliation was somehow evidence of guilt, rather than evidence of a character that refused to become what hurt it. Every quality I placed in you that makes you capable of genuine love, of loyalty that does not calculate its return, of endurance that outlasts what most people can sustain. They picked up each one and turned it into a weapon they used against you. They were not confused about what they were doing, my child. The ones who gaslit you most skillfully were not having a genuine misunderstanding with reality. They were constructing an alternative version of it, brick by brick, conversation by conversation, designed specifically to make you lose your footing in your own experience. Every manufactured confusion was deliberate. Every twisted account told about you in rooms you were not in was a choice that someone made while knowing what the truth was. Every alliance built quietly on the slow and careful dismantling of your reputation. Every moment of performed warmth in front of witnesses, while the undermining continued in private. These were not the accidents of people with poor self-awareness. They were decisions, repeated and calculated, made by people who understood the full weight of what they were doing and chose to do it anyway, because they believed they would not be held to account for it. They believed the story they were telling would outlast the truth. They believed you would not survive long enough or rise high enough for the distance between their version and the real one to ever become visible. They were wrong, and I have been the reason they were wrong the entire time. Job 5:12 says, I thwart the plans of the crafty so that their hands achieve no success. My child, what they called strategy, I called evidence accumulating against them. What they called momentum, I called the building of a case they could not see being assembled. What they called control, I called the cataloging of choices that would one day require an answer, because I do not move on impulse. I do not respond out of emotion the way they acted against you. I move on truth. I move on the full and complete record of what actually happened, the one they could not edit, could not spin, could not soften with the right framing in front of the right audience. And while they were managing their narrative for everyone who would listen, I was holding something they could not touch and cannot appeal, the truth, not their version of it, the one I witnessed. Type I know who I am in the comments right now. Type it as the declaration of someone who has spent too long having their reality rewritten by people who needed them confused. Type it as reclamation. You know what you lived, you know what was done to you. You know the difference between what happened and what they said happened, and you have always known it. Even in the moments when their confidence in their own version made you question your footing. You were not losing your mind, my beloved. You were being deliberately destabilized by people who needed you unsteady. Type it. Let it be the moment you stop waiting for their acknowledgement before you trust your own knowing. Now let me tell you something about their trap, my child, because this is the piece that will undo the last hold their scheme has over you. When they designed it, they were confident in the specific way that people are confident when they have done this before, when they have run the same play against other people and watched it work, when they have enough experience in manipulation to believe that the patterns they understand are the only patterns in the room. They mapped the exits. They covered the routes. They positioned people and narratives in a way designed to intercept you regardless of which direction you turned. From the purely human vantage point, from inside the walls of what they built, it appeared complete. You felt it, beloved. You felt the way every option seemed to close at the same time. The way the people you thought you could reach had somehow already been reached first. The way the doors that should have opened for you were not opening. You were not imagining the trap. I am not going to minimize what it cost you to be inside it. But here is what they could not account for. Here is the thing they did not know about how I work. I was already on the other side of it before they finished building the walls. Genesis 50:20 says, what you intended to harm me, God intended for good. Joseph said those words to the brothers who stripped him and sold him and left him with nothing but a future they were certain they had destroyed. And he said them not as the spiritual performance of a man who had decided he was supposed to forgive and was trying to feel the words he was saying. He said them as the testimony of someone who had lived the full arc of the story and could now see from the other side what the inside had been unable to show him. What they designed as my ending became the opening chapter of everything that followed. They did not fail by accident. They were outmaneuvered by a God who had already written the next chapter before they finished writing the last line of their scheme. You are Joseph, my beloved, not as a vague inspirational comparison meant to encourage someone who has suffered. In the specific and structural sense of someone whose calling activated opposition before the calling was fully visible, even to them. Every chosen one carries a target before they carry a crown. The intensity of what was unleashed against you was proportional to the significance of what lives in you, and the people who moved against you, whether they understood it or not, were responding to a future they could sense but not fully see. They felt threatened by something they could not name. They felt the weight of a purpose on your life that made their own proximity to smallness uncomfortable. So they moved against you with everything they had. And the moving, my child, was the moment they sealed their own verdict. Type I was never their victim in the comments right now. not as defiance directed at them, as the declaration of what has always been true, what was true even in the moments when you could not feel it, even in the seasons when everything visible argued against it being real. They cast you in the role of the one who loses. But that role was never written for you in the story I authored. My script is the only one that holds. Type it, my beloved, stay with me. If you have not yet pressed follow on this channel, do it now and turn on the notification bell. I am not finished releasing what I am releasing through this space. Every message here is part of a longer word over your life. Do not be present for some of it and absent for the rest. My child, I need to speak to your silence now, because I know what it cost you, and I know what the people around you made of it. There were moments when you had the receipts, when you had documentation, dates, words spoken and received, the memory of conversations held in private that contradicted everything being said in public, and something held you back from using it. Maybe exhaustion, maybe the fear that even with every piece laid out, they would still find a way to make it your fault. Maybe the counsel of someone who said not yet. Maybe a knowing in your spirit, the quiet kind that does not announce itself but is simply present and settled, that the moment had not arrived, that the one who fights on your behalf had not yet given the signal to move. Whatever held you back, my beloved, that restraint was the most spiritually powerful thing you did in this entire season. Because when you chose not to respond with your mouth, you gave me room to respond with something they had no category for. Something they could not deflect or manage or spin with the right framing delivered to the right audience. Psalm 56:8 says, "You have collected all my tears in your bottle." My child, every tear shed in the seasons when no one was watching was a prayer I received with full attention. Every night you cried without a witness. Every moment you broke apart in private and reassembled before morning because you had learned that your pain made others uncomfortable and their discomfort had somehow become your responsibility to manage. Every silent hour of carrying what was done to you without the dignity of even having someone name it as real. I received everyone, not as reports filed from a distance, with the full presence of a father whose child was being injured, who was holding back his response, not from indifference but from precision, not from powerlessness but from strategy. I was letting them go past the point where the verdict could be contested. I was letting them stack the evidence against themselves until the pile was undeniable, until no reframing, no tearful public statement, no appeal to mercy could undo what had been established by their own repeated choices. They thought your patience was your limit running out. They mistook your grace for a cup that would eventually empty. Every time you absorbed the blow and kept moving forward instead of retaliating, they moved the line a little further, because mercy that is not understood as mercy is mistaken for permission. Romans 12:19 says, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay." That is not a comfort offered to the wounded to help them endure. That is the active declaration of the one who holds the scales of justice and has never once set them down or been distracted from what is written in them. The repayment is not symbolic. It is not a vague spiritual balancing of energies. It is real and specific, and already in motion through the lives of every person who chose escalation when I was offering them the space to choose repentance. Type "I release the outcome to God" in the comments right now. Type it as the act of laying down what was never yours to manage. You were not designed to carry the weight of justice, my beloved. Your assignment was faithfulness through the waiting, to keep your heart from hardening into something that could not love again, to refuse bitterness as a companion even when it would have been the most understandable response in the world. You did all of that. So now let the outcome belong entirely to me. Type it. Let your hands open. There is someone whose name is on your heart right now as you listen to this. Someone who is still inside the trap, still unable to find the exit I have already prepared, still in the season of wondering in the quiet hours whether heaven is aware of what is being done to them. Sow a seed today in their name as a declaration that you believe I see them the way I see you in this moment. Visit the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen and sow on their behalf in faith. What is sown in faith for someone in the middle of their hardest season is the kind of seed I multiply back into the life of the one who gave it. Sow for them, my child, and then stay close. Now let me speak plainly about what is happening to them right now, beloved, because you deserve to hear this without softening and without the hedging that turns a verdict into a suggestion. What they set in motion against you has reversed. Not because you cursed them, not because you prayed for their ruin, not because you eventually found the right person to tell and the right moment to tell it. It has reversed because of a law I wove into the architecture of reality before the first human day was counted. Psalm 7:15 says, "Whoever digs a hole and scoops it out falls into the pit they have made. The trouble they cause recoils on them, my child." This is not comfort language designed to make the injured feel better about a wound that is still open. This is the precise mechanical description of what is currently unfolding in the lives of the ones who laid their traps and laughed when they thought they had caught you. The pit they dug for your reputation is the one their own reputation is now falling into. The confusion they deliberately manufactured in your thinking is now living in their own mind. The isolation they arranged around your life is closing in around their own relationships. The financial pressure they tried to create for you is making itself known in their own resources. They are not at peace, my beloved. They have not had a full night of peace since the first moment the plan stopped producing the results they designed it to produce. Since the first moment you did not stay down the way they expected, the tables have turned, and they cannot stop it, my child. I want you to look at your own life right now and see the signs of it, because they are already present, even if they have not yet reached their fullest expression. Look at the conversations that have shifted around you. The people who were convinced by the narrative they constructed are beginning to ask questions they would not have asked 6 months ago. The version of you that was sold to them is beginning to develop cracks. Not because you work to expose it, but because a false thing cannot sustain itself indefinitely against the weight of truth. They built on sand, my beloved, and sand does not hold. The structure they raised against your reputation is settling, and the settling is visible to those who are paying attention, even if it has not yet fully collapsed. Look at the places in your own life where things are beginning to move that were not moving before. Doors that were closed so long you had stopped knocking on them. Conversations that were frozen, now beginning to thaw. Opportunities that seemed to have passed you by circling back in forms you did not anticipate. Resources appearing from directions you would not have thought to look. These are not random fluctuations, my beloved. These are the specific and targeted responses to a specific and targeted prayer. The prayer you prayed with your endurance, with your refusal to become bitter, with every night you chose to lay what was done to you at my feet, rather than carry it into the next morning. I heard every one of those prayers. I have been answering them in the order that produces the most complete and undeniable result. And look at them. Look at what is happening in the lives of the ones who thought they had won, not with the satisfaction of someone watching an enemy fall. Because you are not that. My child, you were never that. Look as a witness. Look as someone watching the law of reaping and sowing operate in real time so that you know, not theoretically but experientially, that I mean what I say when I say what a person plants is what they harvest. Galatians 6-7 says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." My beloved, that word "cannot" is absolute. There is no path around the principle. There is no spiritual sophistication that exempts a person from the consequence of what they planted. What they sowed against your life is coming up in their own soil. What they designed for your ruin is manifesting in their own ground. And the instability they are experiencing, the relationships that are no longer as secure as they appeared, the influence that is beginning to feel less solid than it once did, the quiet unease that follows them into spaces where they used to feel fully comfortable. This is not coincidence. This is the harvest of what they planted, arriving on schedule with a precision only I could arrange. Here is what their fury reveals, my child. And I want you to hear this clearly, because the fury of the ones who hurt you can feel destabilizing even when things are moving in your favor. My child, and I want you to hear this clearly, because the fury of the ones who hurt you can feel destabilizing even when things are moving in your favor. They are furious because they are losing control of a narrative they spent enormous amounts of energy constructing. They are furious because the trap they built with patience and coordination and the careful recruitment of people who could be convinced to participate did not hold. They are furious because every move they made to keep you contained has been matched by a counter-move they could neither see coming nor identify after it arrived. And their fury is evidence of something they are trying not to admit even to themselves. that what was working against you was not working against me. Job 5:13 says, I catch the wise in their craftiness, and the schemes of the wily are swept away. They were outmaneuvered before the first strategy session concluded. I moved first. What I move first does not get reversed by the fury of people who discovered too late what they were actually up against. Type their plans cannot touch me in the comments right now, not as arrogance, as the settled conviction of someone who just heard from the one who holds all things that the schemes assembled against their life were being dismantled before they were finished being assembled. Type it as faith spoken before the full visible evidence has arrived. The enemy's plans require your belief in their power to function at full capacity. Withdraw that belief entirely. Type it, beloved. I want to speak now about the witnesses, my child, because there were people who saw what was happening and said nothing. Not because they did not see clearly, because they calculated the cost of speaking and decided that cost was too high for them personally. They chose the stable side, the side that required nothing of them in the moment, the side that let them maintain their position and their access and their peace. And in choosing it, they made a choice that was recorded in the same place where every other choice in this story has been recorded. I am not releasing judgment on them in this message, because their story is not finished, and I work in every story until the last breath. But hear this, their silence was not neutral. It was a choice, and I do not weigh choices as nothing simply because they were made quietly and without announcement. Your part in relation to them is a single instruction: release them. Not for their sake, not as the spiritual performance of a maturity you are supposed to display. Release them because carrying what they chose and what they refuse to choose is taking up space in your spirit that is now needed for what is opening in front of you. The season ahead of you requires your hands to be free and your attention to be forward-facing. You cannot move at the pace I am moving you if you are dragging behind you the weight of everyone who failed to show up when you needed them to. Let them go to me. I will deal with each account with full accuracy. Now I need to tell you what happened to the seed they buried, my child, because understanding this changes the way you carry everything that was done to you from this moment forward. When they stripped you and isolated you and took from you the things you had built and the people you had trusted and the spaces you had worked to occupy, they thought they were destroying you. They were doing something else entirely. Every chosen one that I have ever sent into a season of being buried has come out the other side carrying something that the burial was necessary to produce. The pressure is not incidental to the growth. The pressure is the mechanism of the growth. What you carry inside you, the purpose I placed in you before your first breath, required a specific kind of soil to reach its full depth of root, and that soil is exactly what they inadvertently created when they applied pressure to your life. They buried a seed, my beloved, and what they buried was not what they thought they were burying. They thought they were burying someone ordinary who had gotten above themselves. They were burying someone extraordinary who had not yet fully discovered it. The burial was the final piece of the preparation, because seeds that are simply left on the surface of comfortable ground grow shallow roots. Roots that look impressive but cannot hold when the wind comes. But seeds that are pressed into the dark, pressed deep by the weight of what is laid on top of them, those roots go down until they find water that surface-level growth can never access. My child, your roots are deep now in a way they could not have been without the season you just came through. You have access now to reserves of faith and endurance and clarity that only come to the ones who have been pressed far enough into the dark to discover that I am present even there, and now you are rising. Not slowly, not tentatively, not with the apologetic half-emergence of something that is not sure it deserves to come up. You are rising with the unstoppable force of something whose roots are so far below the surface that nothing above the ground can threaten it. They cannot push you back down. They already tried. What they pushed down became what pushed through. What they covered became what could not be contained. What they tried to end became the beginning of something they did not have the capacity to anticipate, because they did not have access to the story I was writing while they were writing theirs. The ones who threw dirt on your name are going to find themselves standing in front of a life they cannot explain, not because you set out to prove them wrong, because the fruit of what I planted in you cannot be hidden by the amount of dirt any human hand can throw. You are rising, my beloved, and the rising is not yet finished. What is breaking ground now is only the beginning of what I have been growing in the deep places of you. The fullness of it is still coming, and when it arrives, the only explanation that will fit is the one I have been the author of from the beginning. Type "God planned this from the beginning" in the comments right now. Type it as the declaration of someone who is beginning to see the full architecture of what looked from the inside like chaos and cruelty and randomness. Nothing that happened to you fell outside the scope of a story I was writing with full knowledge of its ending. Every trap, every closed door, every turned alliance, every season of isolation, and the long stretches when visible evidence argued against everything you believed about me and about yourself. I was writing through all of it. The turning of the tables is not a new development. It is the arrival of what was always planned. Type it, my child. Share this message right now with someone who is in the middle of a battle they did not start. Someone who has been lied on and misrepresented and quietly undermined by people who wore the face of friendship while working against everything they were building. Someone sitting alone with a version of their own story that no one has fully witnessed. Send this to them without explanation. Let it find them. Trust me to do what I always do with every word I speak. Land it exactly where it was prepared to land. Now I need to prepare you for something, my beloved, because what I have spoken over you today will be challenged before the day is over. The moment truth lands on a chosen one, the moment a weight lifts and a clarity arrives, there is always a response from the one who benefits from the confusion. It will come as a thought that sounds like wisdom but is not wisdom. A thought that says, "But nothing has visibly changed yet." Or you are just being emotionally manipulated by content designed to make you feel special. Or, "Look at the reality of your situation. These are just words, and your situation is the same." My child, when that arrives with the specific framing designed to hit you in the place where your confidence is newest, recognize it for what it is. That is not discernment. That is the accuser using the vocabulary of reason to take back what just shifted. Hold what you received. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "I know the plans I have for you, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." Those words were not spoken into a comfortable season. They were spoken into Babylonian captivity, into the center of precisely the kind of situation where every visible piece of evidence argued against them being true. And they were true then. I have not changed. They are still true, my beloved. I need you to understand what they actually did when they tried to bury you, because this is the truth that reverses the last piece of the lie. They thought they were writing your ending. They were clearing the ground for your beginning when they isolated you from the people and the spaces and the structures that had been filling your time and your attention. They were unknowingly removing the noise that had been drowning out the specific word I had been trying to reach you with for years. When they took things from you that you had worked to build, they were dismantling structures that were not strong enough to hold the weight of what I was preparing to build through you. When they closed doors, they were sealing off directions that would have cost you years. You did not have to spend on paths that were not yours. They thought they were diminishing you, my child. They were thinning the field so that what I planted in you before your first breath would finally have the space and the light it needed to break through. They buried a seed, and now it is breaking the ground open from below. They thought they were marking your grave. God was marking your beginning. What they called your ending, I called the soil. What they called defeat, I called germination. And what rises from ground that was prepared with that much pressure and that much darkness is not a fragile thing. It is a tree, my beloved, something with roots deep enough that no wind they generate can reach the foundation of it. Type, "I receive the vindication" in the comments right now. Not the vindication of the dramatic public moment where everyone sees and acknowledges and the full truth is displayed to every person who needs to see it, though that moment has its own appointed time. Type it as the receipt of something more permanent than that. The vindication of knowing that the one who holds all justice has your case, has never set it down, has never been deceived by any version of events other than the one he witnessed with full attention. Type it, my child. Let the receiving be spoken. What is received with acknowledgement takes root in a way that silent receiving never quite does. My beloved, let me tell you what the next season looks like for the one who has received what I have spoken today, because I want you to know what to watch for and how to recognize what is mine when it arrives. The first thing you will notice is that your voice carries differently, not because you will speak louder or with more force, but because the weight that was sitting on it, the weight of unprocessed injustice and the exhaustion of carrying what was done to you without a witness. That weight is lifting, and a voice that is no longer carrying that weight reaches further than it did before. People who never noticed you are going to notice you. Not because you changed what you are saying, but because something in the room changes when a person who has been vindicated by heaven enters it. There is a quality in the presence of someone who has been through the fire and come out the other side that is recognizable to every person in the room, even if no one can name what they are perceiving. You carry that now, my child. Let it be what it is. Do not explain it. Do not shrink from it. It is not arrogance. It is the fragrance of someone who has been close to me in the hard places. The second thing you will notice is that the people who were kept from you are finding their way back, and new people who were always meant to be in your life are beginning to appear. When I clear a path, I clear it completely. The connections that were disrupted by what was done against you, the relationships that were poisoned by the stories told about you in rooms you were not in, I am restoring them through the simple mechanism of truth arriving in its own time. Some of the people who were turned against you are already seeing through the version they were given. They will not always announce this. They will not always come to you with a formal acknowledgement of what happened. But you will feel the shift in how they hold themselves in your presence. You will feel the difference between someone who still carries the false version and someone who has quietly set it down. And the new people, my beloved, the ones I have been positioning in your life for the season ahead, they are arriving in forms you may not immediately recognize. Pay attention to who you feel inexplicably at ease with. Pay attention to who arrives without agenda. Pay attention to the connections that feel different from the ones you have known, the ones that do not require you to manage yourself carefully or perform a version of who you are for their comfort. Those are mine. The third thing you will notice is that the work of your hands begins to carry a different weight. What you build in this season carries the mark of someone building from clarity rather than from fear, from purpose rather than from the need to prove something, from the solid foundation of knowing who you are rather than from the anxious uncertainty of someone who has been told too many times that they are less than they are. Ecclesiastes 9:11 says the race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong. What you will discover in this season is that favor is not distributed according to the human metrics of deserving. It moves according to alignment, and you are more aligned now than you have ever been, because the season you just came through pressed out of you the things that were creating interference between you and the calling I placed on your life. Build now, my child. Build from this new ground. What is built in this season will outlast what the previous season took from you, not because you are trying harder, because the foundation is different. Let me pray over you now, beloved. Let me bring everything we have walked through together before the one who never stops being both Father and Judge. Father, I come before you on behalf of this one who stayed through every word of this message, the one who has been lied on and chose truth over retaliation, the one who was isolated and chose faithfulness over bitterness, the one who was stripped of things they built and chose to keep building rather than collapse under what was taken, the one who watched what was done to them go unaddressed by the people around them and brought it here rather than taking it into their own hands. I see this one. I have seen them through every moment of this season and the seasons before it. Every time they held the pain privately because there was no space they could safely put it down. Every moment they got back up when they should not have had anything left to get up with. Every time they forgave without receiving an apology because the alternative was carrying a weight heavier than the forgiveness cost them. I saw each one. None of them are absent from the record I am keeping. I speak now over what was assembled against this life. The walls they constructed, I name them fallen. The narrative they crafted with such careful investment, I name it exposed. The alliances they built on the misrepresentation of this one, I name them broken at the foundation. The access they sought to the future I have been preparing, I name it revoked and permanently sealed. Every weapon formed was formed against a life I have covered. Isaiah 54:17 stands as it has always stood and will always stand. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Not the weapon of slander, not the weapon of isolation, not the weapon of the long and coordinated campaign to make you question your worth and your calling and your right to take up space in the rooms I assigned you to. None of them shall prosper. That is a decree. It is already in effect. It has been in effect from the moment the first weapon was formed, And Father, I ask now for the full release of what was held in the waiting season. Every blessing that was positioned during the endurance, let it arrive with a weight that makes its source undeniable. Every door that was kept closed while the preparation was completing, let it open now with everything that was stored behind it. Every connection, every resource, every open road that was being arranged in the background of what looked like a story going in the wrong direction. Let it arrive now in a way that removes all need for argument, because the planting season is over. What was buried is rising, and what rises will be so specifically the fruit of what was planted that the only explanation that fits is the one I provide. In the name of Jesus, Amen. Let the Amen rise in you now, my child. Type Amen in the comments, and let it be the seal over everything spoken in this message. The accuser cannot contest what has been decreed. The ones who plotted cannot undo what heaven has already set in motion. Type Amen as the agreement of someone who just stood in the highest court and heard the verdict read in their favor, because the one who prepared their defense has never lost a case. And now, beloved, type it is done, not because every visible piece has arrived, because the one who does not speak words, he will not fulfill, has spoken over your life today. And what he speaks does not wait on your ability to see it to be true. The tables have turned. God moved first. And what he set in motion does not need your management or your anxiety or your careful watching for signs of progress. It needs your trust. Type it, my child. Let the declaration stand. The narrator speaks now. If you stayed through every word of this message, something shifted in you today that does not reverse when the screen goes dark. The clarity you received, the weight that began to ease, the confirmation that what you lived was real and was witnessed and has been answered. These things go with you into everything that comes next. Sow a seed today for the one whose name came to mind during this message. The one who is still inside the trap, still searching for the exit God has already prepared. Visit the link in the description below, or scan the QR code on screen and sow on their behalf. And as you sow for them, receive for yourself the full weight of what was spoken over your life today. God moved first. He planned the exit before they finished building the walls. The tables have turned, and what he has set in motion, they cannot stop.